Annapolis, you would go over the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, come down through Easton and St. Michael's in a straight line going to the ocean. And about, I'd say 6 or 7 miles before you got to Ocean City in the ocean, that's where Salisbury was. Today it's a pretty big town, pretty successful. Back then, I would say, was a lot of watermen down there, a lot of blue collar, a lot of farming and, canning were predominant things. Ocean City, as a recreation point, was probably extremely small. Wouldn't you say that? There wasn't too much to Ocean City then.
No, Ocean City was, there was only a two-lane highway to Ocean City, and just a plain turtleback macadam road.
Wow.
The Salisbury itself was only about 6,000 people, I guess. I know in town, before World War II, there was only one stoplight in town. We kids used to say, we called it the stop and go light. It didn't have a yellow light. There was just a red and a green.
Huh, interesting. Let me ask you something. Everyone's probably listening to this and saying, okay, where the hell is this surprise we're talking about? So I think we probably ought to tell them, or you ought to tell them. I want you to kind of, first off, what is today and what year is it? What month is it? What month is it?
What month is it? Well, August.
August what? Do you remember the date today?
I think it's the 12th.
Exactly. In the year 2000 and what?
2008.
Right. So that's what today is. Now, I want you all that are listening to this to kind of just kind of sit back and kind of imagine, if I were to tell you that his grandfather was born before the Civil War, there's a lot of you out there would go, hey, that's pretty cool.
That's right.
But that's not true. This is the rare, when he told me this out of the blue a year or two ago, it totally blew me away. I want him to tell the camera, here, this is your camera, here. Please tell me when your father was born.
My father, and most people think I'm fibbing them, was born before the Civil War. He was born January the 6th, 1861. And the war started in April.
Fort Sumter.
And
who was president then?
And I believe, if I'm correct, that he was born in Buchanan's administration.
Isn't that amazing?
Lincoln had been elected, but he hadn't taken the oath yet. He wasn't in office.
Right, exactly.
And he was born in a community. It wasn't a town. It was just a settlement, more or less, called Athol, A-T-H-O-L. Locally, the area was known as Hungry Neck. Now, a neck along the shores here is a land that is in between two creeks. So Hungry Neck was in between Barren Creek and there was Quantico Creek. So it was known more as Hungry Neck than it was Athol, although I believe there was a post office there at one time. Now, the conditions there, my grandfather, I guess he was an ordinary farmer. My father was born on the farm, and he wasn't poor, but he wasn't wealthy. He was probably just an average farmer. The old house was heated by fireplaces, My grandmother cooked on a fireplace, and the house, I guess, I often wondered just exactly what it looked like. The house, the building, I guess they had ordinarily farm buildings. I know they had a corn crib, they mentioned one time. But the fireplaces, the house couldn't have been constructed real well, because my father said that during the winter, in a cold day, with the wind blowing, you could see the rug raise up off the floor. Now, it's hard to picture somebody staying warm in a house like that. And my father said when he was a young child, his first job on Saturday was molding all the candles that they would use during the week. I never heard him mention anything about an oil lamp. Probably oil lamps were a little bit expensive in those days.
Especially whale oil.
Yeah.
It was not cheap.
Now, there wasn't any such thing as kerosene. Kerosene came in after oil was discovered in western Pennsylvania.
1859.
And it took some time, of course, before it was available commercially. I've heard, when I was a kid, I've heard a lot of the old farmers say, I've got to go down and get a gallon of coal oil. Well, coal oil was a derivative of coal. And the big cities where they had retorts that would heat this coal to get the gas. So they had gas lamps in the cities, and they would use this coal coke or the oil out of it to refine into coal oil. So that was the first oil that they had around in the country. Now, my father, I have asked him a lot of questions about living in the country. He said that I asked him, for instance, if you got sick, what did you do? And if you had all of these home remedies and they didn't work. He said, well, you hitched the horse and you went for the doctor. You know, the doctor might be 10 miles away. So that meant that if it was at night, you had to go in the dark to the doctor and fetch him and bring him home.
Probably on horse and saddle.
Huh?
Probably on horse and saddle.
Oh, horse. Well, they usually went with horse and buggy.
Buggy.
Now, I asked my father one time about time. I said, how did you tell time? I do know, he said, that they had a clock at home, a mantel clock. He said it had wooden wheels and pinions and gears. And my grandfather would crush walnuts to get the oil to oil the clock. Now, I said, well, how did you set the time? He said, by the sun. Well, that's not very accurate. I can think of ways to do that. I should have asked him exactly how they did that.
You probably had a sundial, a rudimentary sundial. I mean, you can take a stake and mark it out. So
you can put a stake down and measure the shadow, and set the clock when the shadow's the longest, but you can be off a half an hour that way. But what does a farmer need exact time for anyway? He had to get up probably before sunup, and they'd go to bed at sundown.
Right. They didn't have night lights.
No.
That's one of the things people don't seem to understand.
Yeah.
In the old days, in your dad's time, that there was no electricity, there was no kerosene. Oil for people who were farmers was very expensive, especially the whale oil from the sperm oil. That was very, very expensive, and very few people could afford it. So you had candles, but candles also had a certain cost to them too. And so most people, excuse me, most people at night, they just went to bed. When it got dark, you just went to bed, and you were lucky. Maybe you had one candle, and you may set up and talk. Well, we're running out of time. I can tell by the camera starting to blink. Let me just ask you one or two short questions before we wrap up. You have been married to a wonderful woman. I call her Marie. You call her
Reezy.
Reezy.
Sure. Nickname for Marie.
Yeah, Marie. And
that's her middle name.
She's totally delightful. She's just great. And how many years have you been married?
Oh, I'd say about 30.
30 years. Okay. Well, I'm married longer than you. I'm married 40 this year. Well, that's about it. I wanted to thank Otis for taking the time to talk to us on camera. This is probably the first time you've been captured on camera talking about this. I know that in the last 6 months or 8 months, the group of people that I know that I talk to, they really are in disbelief when you tell them that I have a next door neighbor whose dad was born before the Civil War. And what makes it even more interesting, you mentioned Irish. Did your grandfather come over during the Irish immigration in the 1840s?
No, they date back before the Revolution in that same area.
Wow.
And
well,
the Lloyds.
Well,
the Lloyds.
The what?
The Lloyds date back in that same area, in that same local area.
Right. Well, that's interesting. It would be nice to know when your grandfather was born, because with your dad being born in 1861, I mean, there's every possibility that your grandfather could have been actually born in the 18th century, and that would be.
It goes pretty close to it. I think the great-grandfather, I have the
genealogy
family tree somewhere. I have to check that out. Now, people ask me, how old was my father when I was born?
Yeah, well, of course, that begs the question.
Well, he was nearly 62. And he had a family before he married my mother. She was his second wife. He married his first wife in 1885 when he was 25. 1886. He was 25 then. And when he married her in 1886, my mother was only 3 years old. She was 23 years younger than he was.
And as you mentioned to me at a previous time, your mother was a very strong woman too, and so so everything worked out fine. Hey, Cary Grant had a daughter when he was in his 70s or something.
Now, by his first wife, he had 2 children. They were very young when they died. And there was Leon and Leela. I have the exact dates. I can't remember all that. They died in the 1890s. My half-brother and half-sister died over 100 years ago.
And that's amazing. That's amazing.
And I don't even have a picture of any of them.
Yeah,
And my father wasn't one for taking pictures somehow. Pictures he took later life were of his pile driver and the vessels he built and things of that sort. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But he lived in Whitehaven. See, he learned the ship carpenter's trade very young. Blinking light.
It's a blinking light. That means that we have about 30 seconds. So we got to wrap it up. I wanted to thank you, Otis, very much. You're a good friend, good neighbor. I love you dearly, as you know. Not too much I wouldn't do for you.
Yeah.
And I just thought this would be interesting for everybody to see. It truly is something I think is rather unique in this country. There's a couple others that you probably put them on one hand. Anyway, thank you all very much, and we'll talk to you later. Happy learning. Bye.